Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Hard Truth. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and also join us and become a member so that we can have a lot of fun this summer. Okay, the devil is in the details in this Idaho 4 case, and the timeline is critical to us finding out what really happened. And today I want to talk to you about just that, the timeline, and how some of the information doesn't match, and it's going to be a big problem for the prosecution. All right, it's time to talk about it. So grab that coffee, the nice cup of tea, as we begin our story. Let's look at New York Post version. Idaho murder suspect Brian Kohberger was stopped twice by Indiana cops while driving to parents' house with dad last month. And let's see. Here it says, at the time of the stop, Indiana State Police said Kohberger still had not been identified as a suspect and there was no available license plate, state, or number for the Hyundai Elantra, which had been reported as part of the investigation in the media. So they're saying that even though the police had released a stock photo of the suspect vehicle, they didn't release a license plate number or anything to where the police in Indiana would know to pull over the car. So that's their justification for not knowing or intentionally pulling him over. Now, CNN published this on December 31st, the day after Brian Kohberger was arrested. It says authorities tracked the Idaho student killing suspects cross country to Pennsylvania, sources say. All right. Authorities tracked the man charged in the killings of 4 Idaho college students all the way to Pennsylvania and surveilled him for several days before finally arresting him on Friday. Sometime right before Christmas, we were zeroing in on him being in or going to Pennsylvania, the source told CNN. In this article by the Indiana News, actually Fox News for Indiana, it says FBI disputes report that agency directed Indiana police to pull over Idaho murder suspect. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is pushing back against reports that it directed law enforcement agencies in Indiana to pull over Idaho murder suspect Brian Kohberger. Reports later emerged that an FBI surveillance team tracking Kohberger on his cross-country drive had directed law enforcement in Indiana to stop Kohberger so they could get video of him and his hands. The FBI said that was not the case. Now let's look at the Indiana Statesman, where it says, was FBI tailing Brian Kohberger cross country? Why Indiana police stopped him twice? I want you to see here. All right. Unknown to either the father or the son, the FBI had been determined to keep a watchful eye on the white Hyundai's trek across America. Only sources in law enforcement would confide with a bristle of embarrassment not long after the car had pulled out of Pullman, Washington. They lost it. Bloom told the Statesman he stands by his reporting. Okay, listen to what Howard Bloom said. Okay? Yet, while there were no recordings of their road trip chats, while what happened as the Hyundai crept through Hancock County, Indiana, has been carefully preserved. The driver, the Moscow Police Department had alerted the nation, was to be considered a person of interest in their investigation. As Deputy Nick Ernestes walked with slow, measured steps toward the passenger side of the Hyundai where Michael sat. There seemed to be no escape. There would be no springing free. Howard Bloom has been right on the money with his reports. Okay, he hasn't backed down, and no one has rebuffed anything he said. Okay, he's saying that Brian Kohberger was a person of interest in the law enforcement databases across the country, which they were tracking him, saying they lost him, and him and his dad took an alternate route to avoid a snowstorm or something, and maybe he was trying to, go on the run, but then they eventually ended up at the house. The truth of the matter is, Bloom has been on point. When he told us about the DNA being, at a Texas lab, nobody came and said, "Hey, this guy doesn't know these." Now, look at the New York Post. FBI denies losing murder suspect Brian Kohberger during cross-country follow. I know a lot of people remember this when they were saying they were tracking him and they lost him and his father. They took some alternate route. Okay. True crime author Howard Bloom, who is penning a book on the shocking slayings, claimed in a roughly 15,000-word, two-part special for airmail that the Fed's surveillance squad lost the 28-year-old murder suspect almost as soon as he left for the road trip home for the holidays in Pennsylvania. The former New York Times reporter claimed sources told him with a bristle of embarrassment that for several alarming hours or more, the chief suspect in a quadruple homicide that had shocked the nation had seemingly vanished. Why does this matter? All right. This is the New York Times. It says, by the morning of December 19th, records show investigators had a name, Brian Kohberger. He had a white Elantra. He was a student at the university 8 miles from the murder scene. Okay, if they got the DNA on the 18th or the 19th, the results back, Brian Kohberger was traveling, was stopped on the 15th, and they had a picture of his tag in Colorado on December the 13th. So he was a suspect before they got his name. That's the point I'm trying to make. Brian Kohberger was a suspect before this IGG testing. On the PCA, they told us on November 25th, law enforcement found the white Elantra on November 29th at approximately 12:28. All right, and the vehicle was registered to Brian Kohberger. This was November the 25th. All right, it says on the same day. This is all one paragraph. The same day at approximately 12:58, Officer Whitman found the car also. And down here it says, I reviewed Kohberger's Washington State driver's license information and photograph. What's he doing with Washington driver's license? The license indicates that Kohberger is a white male with a height of 6 feet and weighs 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the residence on the 13th. So on the 25th, they have his car, they're looking at his license, they're matching his description to what Dylan said, and so he was already a suspect. All right? And remember, the cabbie said that he reported Brian Kohberger's car. He lived a mile away. He reported his car to police right after they had the press release on December the 7th, saying that, look out for this car. So this man was already a suspect. There's nowhere in the world, the first time they became aware of Brian Kohberger was the 18th or the 19th of December when they got some tip from the FBI. And there's no way those two stops in Indiana were not orchestrated by Moscow PD.